Good morning, Change Point. I'm Tony Murrow, and this is Bible Breakfast. This week on Bible Breakfast, we're in Psalm 36, and we spent 2 days talking about the natural way of man, and then yesterday we started talking about the way of God, and we looked at one of the attributes of God, his never stopping, never giving up, unfailing, always and forever love. And today, we're going to take a look at the next verse and another incredible attribute of God. So, Psalm 36, verse 6. Your righteousness is like the highest mountains, and your justice like the great deep. So, we have another chiasm like yesterday. First, it's like the highest mountains, and then it's like the great deep. The point is, it is both big and stable and unstoppable. And what is this big, stable, unstoppable thing? God's righteousness and justice. Now, if you're new to reading the Bible, these words might not stand out to you, but this is a really big deal. These two words, righteousness and justice, appear in the Hebrew Bible a lot, and they normally do so together. This is a huge part of what it means to be the people of God. Let me show you. Genesis chapter 18, God is making his covenant with Abraham, and look at what he says. For I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice. There's our words. Job, the oldest book in the Bible. Job says that the Almighty is exalted in power, that he will not oppress justice and abundant righteousness. King David, the author of this psalm, widely regarded as the best king of Israel. Why so? Samuel says it's because he executed justice and righteousness unto all his people. When the Queen of Sheba met David's son Solomon, she praised him, saying that God had surely made him king to maintain justice and righteousness. And the prophets are full of this. In Jeremiah, God describes himself in chapter 9 as the Lord who exercises loving kindness, that's Hesed from yesterday's video, and justice and righteousness on earth, for he delights in these things. Finally, the prophet Isaiah foretells the coming of the Messiah, saying that the Messiah will sit on the throne of David to, quote, establish it and sustain it with justice and righteousness. So the books we just looked at there span more than 1,000 years, possibly much more than 1,000 years, yet God has said over and over again through different authors, in different contexts, I care about this. So what do these words mean? Righteousness is an objective goodness that is based on God's divine standard. The idea is that good and evil are defined by the existence of God. Things that are more in alignment with God's character are better. Things that are less in alignment are worse. The human conscience then is God's gift of common grace to everybody to allow them to perceive this dimension of reality. We may err in all kinds of ways, but the biblical idea of righteousness is that good is a real thing that exists independent of human beings just because of God. Justice, then, is the equitable and impartial application of righteousness in a group of people. That's why they always appear together. Righteousness reveals what is good, and justice allows people to experience it. So, God's design is that each generation of his people would dig into his teaching and seek after righteousness and justice. These words, particularly justice, are flying around all over online. We are engaged in a national conversation on what does righteousness and justice mean for our nation. But for us as believers, we need to remember to use the Bible as a mirror to look at ourselves before we use it as a magnifying glass to look at others. So I don't want to leave you looking out there for what these things would look like. I want to encourage you to look much closer to home. No matter what, here's the thing: you are not going to be the key for our nation. I love you, but you are just not working at that scale. On the other hand, your home, your school, your workplace, your clubs, your online gaming clan, you probably have a lot of influence there. And the mission falls to each of us to understand God's righteousness and to live it out in the world around us. So, maybe you've never studied the Bible. You have no idea what God really even says is righteous. Maybe you've just heard people talk about the Bible, heard sermons, or you've been to church or heard other people talk online, whatever. I encourage you, redeem this 4-week reset. The Bible is free. Every translation, every audio Bible, it's all free on your phone. Final tip on that front, there's an app called Read Scripture. This is the creation of the Bible Project out of Portland. They have videos and descriptions and summaries, and they tell you what you're going to read, and then they explain what you just read. It is a really fantastic app. For others of us, we know what God is asking us to do, but we're not actively engaged in wrestling with how to do it. Let me encourage you, this last season has been crazy. Now is a great time to start examining again. Start confessing sin, get back into community, and back to letting God transform you into the person that He meant you to be. God bless you, Change Point. Have a great day. See you tomorrow morning.